100 years ago in comics, February 16th, 1924. It's Little Orphan Annie by Harold Gray. A reporter has come to talk to Mrs. Warbucks, and Annie watches from behind a curtain. The reporter has on a very fancy 1920s hat and a lady's tailored coat and a necktie. Mrs. Warbucks is still playing with her long pearls and is wearing a long dress. The reporter says, "I'm a reporter from the Daily Windjammer. I wish you would tell me all about your thrilling robbery." "Oh, yes, indeed. Delighted, I'm sure." Mrs. Warbucks and the reporter sit across from each other. Annie hides behind Mrs. Warbucks' chair. Mrs. Warbucks says, "There were 4 of the ruffians. I came upon them just as they were preparing to blow open the jewel safe. I was unarmed, but took them so by surprise that one of them dropped his pistol." "How brave of you, Mrs. Warbucks," the reporter says. Mrs. Warbucks continues, "Snatching it up, I covered the 4 of them and would have turned them over to the police, but they begged so I had to let them go. That's really all there was to it. Hardly worth a story, I fear, but you know how I abhor publicity." "What marvelous courage," says the reporter. Annie stands by herself in this final panel and says, "Gee whiskers, I've heard of white lies, but those must be rainbow-colored. After that, I guess Mrs. Warbucks will have to be almost perfect all the rest of her life if she ever wants to go to heaven."